In the last segment, I talked about black privilege, and that is the affirmative action programs that have been created in America from the Johnson administration forward have really created a lot of racism in this country. And no sooner had I finished recording the segment than Joy Reid, a black commentator on MSNBC, made the following comments on her show. And this is from a magazine or an outlet actually on the internet called The Root. And it's advertised as The Root, Black News and Black Views with a whole lot of attitude. So here's the statement, the column that is in The Root. MSNBC host Joy Reid rightfully came for the white Christians who led Donald Trump to victory at the Iowa caucuses, where Trump acquired 51% of the votes with 99% of the votes counted. On Monday, Reid explained that Iowa is around 61% white Christian, though America is 41% white Christian. She talked about the inherent entitlement that this demographic possesses, which is the reason they support Trump. All the things, now they're quoting Reid, all the things that we think about electability and so forth, but none of that matters when you believe that God has given you this country, that it is yours, that everyone who is not a white conservative Christian is a fraudulent American, is a less real American, she stated. And then you don't care about electability. You care about what God has given you. Reid also stated that certain white evangelical Christians believe that they own this country and that immigrants, that brown people, that Hindus like Vivek Ramaswamy and his wife are illegitimate Americans. They're less legitimate Americans than they are. So let's boil this down for just a few moments. Let's think about what Joy Reid had to say. First of all, can you get any more hateful than that? How can it get so hateful, hate speech such as she is spewing? It's hateful against Christianity. It's hateful against white people. It's hateful against the Constitution. It's hateful against the history of this nation. It's racist, but she evidently is protected. Is she protected in her job because she's black? Does she stay in her position because she's black? You know, if a white person were to say something like that about the other side, they would be censored. They would be put out of business. Does she stay in her position regardless of the hateful rhetoric that she continues to spew? Let's think about that word entitlement for just a moment, Joy Reid. Everyone knows entitlement because of quotas, affirmative action. Everyone knows that one cannot fire a black person without answering all the way up the ladder to the top of the chain. If you're in the school system, one cannot fire a black person unless you're ready to answer all the way to the superintendent, and the superintendent may be having to answer to the governor of the state. Who knows? But this is what you get when you have an entitlement affirmative action program, quotas to fill. Putting people in places of influence, such as a TV host, that a person who has really no qualifications for it. Now, someone may say, well, Joy Reid has qualifications. Well, who knows? She may not. And we're simply left in the dark on that because people are put in position because of race. And now this is what the kind of material that she spews. She's not put in the position, evidently, because she's smart, well-spoken, qualified for the job at any level. But perhaps, is it the case she's put in the position because she's black? That's why she's able to spew out this communist-inspired, Marx-inspired rant. And this is exactly what I was talking about the last show. Let's think about that word entitlement for just a few more moments. What does the word entitlement mean? Entitlement means something belongs to or inherently belongs to someone because of, not that you deserve it, but because of who you are. The feeling that you have a right to a position, a right to a salary, a right to going up the ladder in rank in the military, or you might have a right to be in an administrative position in a school job not because you deserve it, not because you're qualified, not because you have earned the degree, but because of your race, because of who you are. And this has been a problem in America for such a long time. I remember reading several years ago the book by Robert Bork, and he talked about different black educators who were putting themselves forward as scholars, and they would absolutely skew history, destroy history, and really ransack what the reality of history was. And everybody knew it, and they would speak at these different events, and they would just absolutely betray what the real history is, simply to tilt it in favor of, for example, the Egyptians in Egypt because they're brown-skinned people, and simply portray it that way, even though there's no real scholarship or no real learning behind it. But no one said anything because, after all, the professor who is professing was a black individual. Well, this is exactly what we're talking about. This is what you get when Johnson created the Great Society program, designed to give blacks something for simply being black, not deserving of it because of skin color. So here's the question for Joy Reid. Iowa, in the caucuses, voted for Donald Trump. Why? She said it was because of white Christians that are predominantly in Iowa. Well, here's an interesting question for Joy Reid. How is it that they voted for Obama in 2012 over Mitt Romney? How did that happen? How was it that the Iowans sided with Barack Obama, a black man? How did that happen? Obama was a Marxist, is a Marxist. He cut his teeth with Marxists. He divided the country like never has been divided since the Civil War, and yet Iowans voted for him. Joy Reid, is this the kind of white entitlement that you're talking about? Is this the kind of Christian entitlement that you have in mind? How all of this come about? I remember when Obama was running, I thought this was humorous if it were not so sad. But I remember talking to Christian friends, and they were saying, well, they would like Obama. They liked the way he spoke. I said, that's not a reason to vote for somebody. But they said also, well, I want to vote for Obama because he's a black man, and maybe the blacks in this country will think that, okay, we're not prejudiced. We'll vote for a black man. I said, no, that is not how this is going to work. This is going to simply empower that position. It's going to empower that belief, and he's going to divide this country racially. Well, exactly that. I was exactly right about it. And we have been so racially divided since Obama's time. And now we get the Joy Reid to just get out and spew hateful anti-white rhetoric on a newscast, not knowing anything she's talking about. And she spews it out simply apparently because of her hatred. This is simply prejudicial talk. And how has this all worked out here? This is exactly, for example, the program that Barack Obama put into place, the affirmatively furthering fair housing. That is, we're going to put minorities and brown-skinned people into white neighborhoods, and we're going to force the issue, giving them huge chunks of money, all unconstitutional, has nothing to do with the Constitution, has nothing to do with trying to follow the Constitution. But hey, who's followed the Constitution for the last 7,500 years anyway, right? So, hey, we're going to put brown-skinned people in white neighborhoods, and we're going to mix it up. That's Obama's AFFH, affirmatively furthering fair housing program. And it's in Syracuse, New York. It's in Portland, Oregon. Now they're putting it down in San Diego, Coronado Island. We're going to have to build 920 different low-income apartments for minorities because this is a very wealthy area where a lot of retired people, and it's predominantly white. So we're going to put them there. See, this is what you get when you try to please and say, well, we'll put a black man in office simply on the basis that he's a black man. Not because he's qualified, talking about Barack Obama, not because he's a constitutionalist, not because he has values as Americans. No, he lied to get into office. But all of that to say simply, this is the kind of thing that you get when you think, well, we're going to vote for a black man because he's black. And so now we got Joy Reid spewing this kind of thing out. Here's something else interesting. The Root, that's the magazine or the outlet, the news outlet media from which I just read. The Root promotes, it says, black views for black people with a whole lot of attitude. Now let's just stop and think about this for a moment. Black views. That assumes that black views are different from white views immediately. And that's exactly how we come to the law. That's how we come to society. That's how we come to job hiring. That's how we come to different issues. We all see it all differently. And so admittedly, we've left the concept of a colorblind society. Why do we talk about a colorblind society? Why do we talk about a colorblind justice system? The Lady Justice has blindfolds. No, not at all. And the left furthers this. They don't even pretend that is the case anymore, that we're colorblind. We want to be colorblind, but they don't even pretend they want to be anymore. Just for an illustration. I remember when O.J. Simpson case, what was that, 30 years ago, O.J. Simpson, and everybody in the country thought, hey, this man is guilty. Of course, everybody sitting around being a juror on television or watching the television, the evidence seemed so clear, but they brought in a black jury, had to have a black jury. They had black attorneys, they didn't want a white attorney trying to accuse him, so they brought in black attorneys to do the prosecuting, black defense attorneys, so forth, and what happened? Well, found to be not guilty of the crime of murdering his wife. And then what was interesting to me is that after that verdict came out, one of the black jurors said that person, he believed, I think it was a man, he said he believed that this was really to make up for the injustice done to the blacks for so many years in the court system. What is that to say? It is to say, well, we don't care about the facts of the case. We don't care whether he's guilty or innocent. We're trying to make up for what we perceive as injustices that have been going on in America for so many years. That is absolutely an atrocity. But America we've accepted it, we've allowed it to go on, and so we've taken that innocent verdict. So what it basically says is, hey, we are not rational thinkers anymore. We don't rationally think about something. We don't look at the facts of the case, because after all, the facts of the case mean very little when compared to whether or not the person is a black person or a white person when bringing a verdict down. The same thing is the case, for example, regarding others. Matter of fact, we'll just take a break. When I come back, there's many other cases regarding this, a lot of more things to say regarding this black-white issue in America. We'll be back in just a moment. So we've seemed to left the area of rational thought, colorblind society. Seemingly, we've gone to a society which basically confesses, okay, we see things differently and purposefully, and we are going to celebrate it, and that's the way it is, even when it comes to law and the application of the law. And that's exactly where we left it when you talked about the O.J. Simpson case in the last segment. So think about this for just a moment. When President Biden elected Ketanji Brown Jackson to be on the Supreme Court, one of the things that he said was, in the phone call that was publicized on television, and he said, well, we need someone who looks like America. Really, what has that to do with deciding the law? What does someone looking like America have to do with it? How about Kamala Harris? And by the way, regarding Ketanji Brown Jackson, that even though she couldn't even answer the question about what is a woman, what is a man, she's not a biologist. She's going to be deciding law for America. She's going to be deciding based on the Constitution. This is absolutely ludicrous. And of course, we are left with the idea that she's there simply because, just as Biden said, she's a person of color. No qualification, or very little qualification. Many other people much more qualified, but she's going to be put there simply on the account of the fact that she is a black person. How about Kamala Harris? What qualifications has she? Every time she speaks, she makes people wonder why she's in office at all. But the answer's obvious, isn't it? How about Lloyd Austin? Lloyd Austin, the Secretary of Defense, U.S. Secretary of Defense. We have 3 wars going on. He goes into the hospital and doesn't tell anybody. They don't even know it. His own commander-in-chief doesn't even know it for 4 days. Maybe that's because Joe Biden himself he's demented himself. I don't know exactly why, but whatever the case is, do you know, in any regular command position, that person would be fired. That person would not have a job. But yet he's going to stay in office, and we cannot escape the feeling that he's there because he's a black man. This is kind of interesting also thinking about this race problem, this racial quota system that we have. Think about the engineering departments in colleges and universities. The national average in an engineering department in the universities would be that, first of all, there's a gender gap. 30% of those in engineering departments for master's degree are 30% of them awarded to women. On the other hand, that means, of course, 70% are awarded to men. So also with doctoral positions in engineering, in all the engineering departments in the universities and the colleges, we have about 24%, according to national average, that are awarded to women. That means about 75% are awarded to men. But if you go down to Alabama, and Alabama State University, which is 100% black, 100% African American, you have, in the engineering department, you have a complete lopsided, upside down statistic, and that is 30% are male, or 35% really, and 64% are female. Now, what was it, the national average? The national average is 70% male, 30% female in the engineering departments. But in Alabama State University, where it's 100% black, it is upside down, and that is 36 or 35% male and 75% or 65% rather female. So what does that say? As a matter of fact, just carrying it on for a little bit, thinking about what that does say, in 2020, 67% of the bioengineering degrees that were awarded at Alabama State University were to women. So what is the lesson? What does this say? It actually says that, is there prejudice here? Is this what's going on, that we have prejudice in America? No, what it does say is exactly what the administration of Alabama State University knows that it says, and that is that the black males in this country do not value such things as an engineering degree. It's not because they're incapable. It's not because they're uneducated. They may be that because their choices in their lower grades, but because they don't have a value system that puts any kind of value at all upon an engineering degree. That's what's happening in the country right now. And that's the reason why to have a quota system, to have an affirmative action system, which the Supreme Court said we can't have it anyway, but we've had it for so long in America, it's absolutely turned this country upside down, racially speaking, and created racial divisions, created so much more anger, so much more hatred racially than otherwise would have been the case. But I'll tell you something that's much worse than that. And that is the affirmative action program and the preferences given to blacks in different positions. It actually is an insult to the many black people, African Americans, who are brilliant. Many of them are Christians, who are scholars, who have great achievements in the world, scholarly speaking. And these people deserve all the credit in the world. But because of an out-of-control system that has affirmative action, it puts a question mark over everybody's head. I think about such columnists. I've learned, for example, so much from a black columnist by the name of Walter Williams. Walter Williams passed away, what was it, last year? He and Thomas Sowell, just great thinkers. I think, wow, Thomas Sowell has a great view of in the entire world. He has great history. He has great economics. He's an economist. Walter Williams is an economist. And one of my favorite books is his writings on economy. Walter Williams. Here's another one, Carol Swain. What a great scholar is Carol Swain. And there's so many great blacks. And incidentally, regarding Carol Swain, the Southern Poverty Law Center several years ago, this is about I think 2012, they said, well, she's a white nationalist because a white nationalist? How does that work? Because that becomes simply a criticism simply because she agrees with the majority of Americans regarding what our immigration system ought to be. And that is, we ought to have stop the out-of-control immigration that's going on in America. That was 2012. No telling what she says now. But be that as it may, the quota system, the affirmative action system, the black preference system that gives the Joy Reids, the nods and give them jobs in spite of the fact that they spew communist rhetoric and communist hatred. All of that it really puts a big question mark over all of those who are actually doing great work, blacks in America. So if we want to really reward achievement and reward excellence, then we need to get rid of any kind of quota system, any kind of affirmative action, and quit giving preferences to blacks based simply upon the fact that they're blacks. Now I wanted to go to a different direction with the same thing, this entitlement program, and it's destroying the classrooms across America as well. And this is in a reverse fashion, and I want to talk about restorative justice. Now, there's an organization right here in the state of Texas called Texas Appleseed. It bills itself as an Austin-based public interest justice center to change unjust laws and policies involving juvenile justice. But what it basically does is apply socialism and socialistic quotas to the classroom and to juvenile justice. So specifically, the Texas Appleseed Project says they want to dismantle unjust laws that unduly burden historically undeserved Texans, by which they mean minority children. They tell us, in their view, is being undeservedly punished within the school system at a higher rate than white children. So from a letter that was published 2 years ago sent to the Dallas ISD, the Texas Appleseed wrote this: according to the data from the Texas Education Agency, 6,800 black students and 5,900 Latinx students were suspended out of school from the Dallas Independent School District during the 2018 and 2019 school year, compared to only 363 white students. So get the figures: 6,800 black students, 5,900 Latino or Latinx students, and 363 white students. So what is the conclusion? Now, rational thinking, you might think, well, perhaps it is the case that the black community, where they have 75% fatherless homes, is out of control. But no, we're going to leave rational thinking aside, and they want everybody in white America to back up and fall over themselves running backwards. And so they want to say that all of this represents prejudice in the white society, and prejudice is what puts black children in juvenile justice programs. So that disparity is enough to supposedly prove it, that the educational system, the juvenile justice system, is systemically racist against minorities. And to enhance this charge, the Texas Appleseed frequently invokes the specter of the George Floyd death at the hands of the white police officer. Consider, for example, JDAI, the Juvenile Detention Alternative Initiative. Now, Texas Appleseed reflects the JDAI program that was championed by the Annie E. Casey Foundation. As a matter of fact, the Annie E. Casey Foundation is found on Texas Appleseed materials. And for many years, the director of Annie E. Casey Foundation, and now its consultant, listed as a consultant, is Bart Lubau. Bart Lubau is a former member of the Students for Democratic Society. That would be, of course, a communist front organization from the 1960s. So he's right in line with the Barack Obamas, the Marx-inspired president that we had, the Marxist president. So Bart Lubau is another Marxist. And like other Marxist agitators, this is Marxist-oriented agitators, Lubau, through the JDAI program, will require states to work to reduce the disproportionate representation of minority juveniles in secured facilities. So what's the problem? The problem is too many minorities are being punished, and the reason must be white racism. So what's the solution? Revamp the detention and incarceration procedures, as well as school suspensions along social justice lines, socialism. So let's think about social justice for a moment. Social justice has little to do with actual justice, but focuses upon outcomes. Social justice advocates cry continually about unequal distribution of properties, unequal distribution of monies, unequal distribution of college degrees, and even jail sentences. So now school discipline needs to be meted out by racial quotas. So here's Walter Williams. Remember, I mentioned Walter Williams a moment ago. Great columnist, died about a year and a half ago. He observed regarding social justice, he said this: outcomes of human relationships are often seen as criteria for the presence or absence of justice or fairness. Outcomes frequently used as barometers of justice and fairness are race and sex statistics on income, unemployment, income distribution in general, occupational distribution, wealth ownership, and other measures of socioeconomic status. In other words, no attention at all is paid to any underlying differences among people of different races. No differences, underlying differences because of brought up in different communities. Social justice simply assumes that different outcomes among people is the result of crass prejudice, favoritism, and white racism. That's the unspoken assumption of Texas Appleseed. So, social justice, Texas Appleseed warriors refuse to consider that differences in behavior among peoples, races, subcultures is the result of diverse habits, personal choices, cultural preferences, and moral values honored by different groups in America. For example, just look back what we just talked about, Alabama State University. Why is it that we have an upside-down engineering department as far as gender difference in Alabama State University in the engineering department? Why is it that we have an upside-down statistic? And that is 65% women, 35% men, when the national average is flip of that. Because, as the administrators will tell you, the black males, don't value that. They have a different value system, and that's exactly why we have so many black males incarcerated in America, because they grow up with a different value system. All of them, am I saying all of them? No, not all of them. There are many great ones, many great black African-American males, females, great scholars, great athletes, great patriots. But be that as it may, that's what is going on in the black community. For example, out-of-wedlock birth rates for different racial and ethnic groups in 2008 was just over 40%. The breakdown of that statistic shows that among white non-Hispanic women, out-of-wedlock birth rate was 28.6%, while among Hispanics, it was 52.5%. So we have white women, 28%, that's 29%. Hispanics, 52.5, that's 53%. And when you come to the black community, it's 72.3%. It's a startling jump. Why is that the case? Because the statistic shows there is no moral base, generally speaking, in a black community. Consider abortion. 2005, the abortion rate for blacks in the United States was 5 times that as white women. And similar disparities are found in almost every measurable statistics. It is clearly evident that minority cultures are fostering immoral lifestyles to an alarming degree, which, in my view, shows us why the Carol Swains of this world are great heroes, because they have gone upstream against their culture in the black community and achieved great things. The same thing with Walter Williams, same thing with Thomas Sowell, and many other great black African-American Americans. So Texas Appleseed wants us to believe that white racism is that which brings disciplinary action. In truth, it is because of a different value system that is being instilled in the minority communities. And so what is Barack Obama trying to do? Well, as he was president, and what is still going on, and this AFFH rule, the Affirmative furthering fair housing rule, they're putting these minority communities with very little value system, mixing it in the white population. What's going to happen? Is that going to bring everybody up? No. It's going to bring everything down to the lowest common denominator. That's what's going to happen in America. So it shows us the very root problem is this affirmative action concept, the Great Society that was started, inaugurated by Lyndon Johnson. And it shows itself in people such as Joy Reid, who puts out this extremely hateful rhetoric on a constant basis. That's what's going on in America. And if we're going to save America, we better turn things around and turn things around very, very quickly.